meet my bride. Let's go for a ride in my newfangled automobile. This is where we will go. Nobody knows, but it's sure a great way to feel. Behind the wheel of the speed meter steel, it's my newfangled automobile.
Hello and welcome to Vintage Car History. I'm Wild Bill. American history is filled with Scottish people that came to the USA to seek their fortune and found it. Alexander Graham Bell, Andrew Carnegie, William Kellogg, lots of Scotsmen filled their sporrans in the land of opportunity. And amongst these great Scots is a man that came very close to making Cleveland, Ohio, the hub of the American automotive manufacturing industry. Born to be a sailor, yet destined for automotive greatness, we are, of course, talking about Alexander Winton. Alex was born in Grangemouth, Scotland in 1860 into a naval family. His father was a ship's engineer and began to teach his young son the marine engineering trade at a young age. Ships of all kinds at this time were making the transition from sail to steam, so engineers that understood how to apply, operate, and maintain steam power plants on ships were in high demand for both naval and merchant service. As a young man of 17, he signed on to an English merchant steamship as the engine's mate to learn even more practical applications of steam power. However, when the ship came to New York in 1879, he decided to jump ship. He quickly found work in New York as an iron worker and worked there for a few months before he heard of a steamship that needed an assistant engineer for a long voyage. He signed on and in 1880, took off for a few years, 5 actually, before coming back to New York. Once in the USA, he went to Cleveland, Ohio, where his sister lived, settling down there in 1886. He quickly found engineering work at a local ironworks, but there was more money to be made in other industries. Bicycles were all the rage across the world, and he and his brother-in-law decided to open their own bicycle business in 1891. Designing, building, selling, and servicing bikes was very lucrative back then, and they made very good money. But Alex had caught wind of a new invention, the car, and the bug bit him. Since he now owned a machine shop, he began to apply his knowledge of engines to design his own. But rather than the large steam engines found on the ships of his youth, he turned to gas engines with the idea of developing his own to power a motor vehicle. Indeed, one of his early successful engine designs he attached to one of his bikes, and unlike the ones built by Pennington, his actually worked. Armed with this success, he started to design his own car, which he completed in 1896. A simple single-cylinder gas engine of 3 horsepower, friction clutch and chain drive, it could seat 4 people and, with luck, could get up to about 10 miles an hour. A humble start, but it was the only car in Cleveland at the time, and it sparked much interest. With this encouragement, he built another prototype, which he completed the following year. This car was completely redesigned from the engine up. A twin-cylinder engine that produced a whopping 10 horsepower got it rolling, and a 3-speed tranny drove the rear wheels through chains. The car could seat 6 people and had the power to move them. This was quite a feat for any gas-powered car of that day. Alexander was hooked on cars, and though he did continue making bikes for a time, he shifted his focus on making cars. His first car was well received by both the people and the press, and his second car created even more of a spectacle. He decided to start his own company making automobiles. He bought an old abandoned factory in town and incorporated the Winton Motor Carriage Company in 1897. But Alex knew that if he was going to sell lots of cars, he would need to advertise his product nationally. And to do that, he would have to spend a massive amount of money on newspaper ads all over the country. Instead, he decided to create a new spectacle, to drive a car from Cleveland, Ohio to New York City, a distance of some 800 miles. Just the fact that he was going to do it would make the papers in every town he passed through, making news and thus getting free advertising along the way. Of course, there was no road connecting the two cities, but that wasn't going to stop our intrepid Alex. He left Cleveland on July 28, 1897 and headed east. Driving from town to town, Winton stopped at every one to refuel at the local apothecary, let the townsfolk marvel at his car, and, of course, answer their questions and the questions of the local press as well. He arrived in New York 10 days later to much acclaim. The Winton car had proven to be reliable enough to handle the wagon trails of America and stay the course. And so, Alexander Winton began to sell cars. His first one sold in March of 1898, and they began to sell rapidly after this. When the Vanderbilts bought a pair of them for themselves, just this fact boosted sales, and 21 Wintons were sold in 1898. This was considerable, and Alex had another idea. Rather than selling directly to the public, why not sell cars to a retailer and let them do the warehousing and selling of the cars? Thus, in 1899, the car dealership was born. But you still have to get the cars to the dealership. So intrepid Alex invented a new vehicle, the gas-powered car-hauling truck. Four-cylinder engine with a whopping 30 horsepower, a platform that could carry 2 cars, and ramps to drive them on and off. His first dealership, located in Reading, Pennsylvania, was the first to take delivery of new cars by this method. Sales soared to over 100 cars in 1899, partly due to one enthusiastic Winton owner deciding to drive one across the United States that year. By 1900, the Winton Motor Carriage Company was the largest in the United States. Newspaper and magazine advertisements, sponsored sporting events, car dealerships, his own logistics network. It was the model that all other American automobile manufacturers followed and still do to this day. It is true that Alexander Winton didn't invent the car, nor was he the first one to build one in the United States, but he certainly was the man that put America on wheels. Thanks for watching Vintage Car History, and we'll see you next week. Peace.